Have you ever tried to stop yourself from feeling something so deeply it begins to hurt just to breathe around it? That thought hit Elliot as he watched Noah laugh into his phone from across the room. Head tilted back slightly, shoulders relaxed in that effortless way that always seemed to draw people toward him. Noah had a magnetism Elliot never quite understood. It wasn't loud. It wasn't showy. It was just there, easy, warm, natural. People drifted into his orbit without hesitation, as if the world trusted him more than it trusted itself. Elliot was not one of those people. Or rather, he hadn't meant to be. They met during their second semester in Boston. A campus housing mix-up, 2 frantic emails, and a mutual friend later, they were moving into a 2-bedroom apartment just off Tremont Street. It was supposed to be temporary, 6 months tops. That had been nearly a year ago. And somehow, despite the difference in how they moved through life, despite how Noah filled silence and Elliot often sank into it, they found a rhythm. One that made sense, even if it shouldn't have. Elliot was the type to memorize subway maps for fun. He journaled in margins, read too late into the night, and often left dishes in the sink when a quote from some dead philosopher took hold of his attention. Noah, on the other hand, was motion. He was constant texts, spontaneous trips to the corner store for cereal at midnight, quick to tease and quicker to forgive. He'd watch movies just to fast forward to the ending. He'd fall asleep during lectures and somehow still pass with charm and smiles and half-baked essays that professors forgave. It wasn't just opposites attract. It was more like contrast creates clarity. They weren't best friends. Not exactly. Not in the conventional way. But they had something. A kind of trust built quietly over time. The kind that made it easier to sit in the same room without speaking and still feel like the space was full. And that's what made everything harder. Elliot never planned to feel anything more than friendship. He had learned, long ago, that crossing lines led to losing people. And with Noah, that wasn't an option. He couldn't afford that kind of loss. But feelings don't ask for permission. They arrive in glances you hold too long. In the way silence lingers after a joke. In the second heartbeat after a casual touch. And Elliot had lost count of how many of those heartbeats had passed before he admitted, at least to himself, that he wanted more. He hated himself for it sometimes. For noticing the way Noah looked after a run, breathless and alive. For catching himself smiling when Noah would mispronounce literary references on purpose just to annoy him. For the way his chest felt tighter whenever Noah mentioned a new girl, always casually, always in passing. Elliot kept these thoughts folded away, locked in a mental drawer he didn't dare open. He had practice in this. He was good at hiding, but something was changing lately. A slow shift. Nothing dramatic. Just moments, like static before a storm. Noah had started asking more personal questions. About Elliot's childhood. About his writing. About what it felt like to be alone in a crowd. One night he asked what Elliot was most afraid of. And when Elliot, half asleep, muttered, hurting someone without realizing it, Noah had just nodded and whispered, "Yeah, same." That night stuck with Elliot, as did the morning when Noah, bleary-eyed and hoodie-clad, made coffee exactly the way Elliot liked it, without asking. He didn't say anything, just set the cup beside him, then left the room. Like it was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. And then there were the quiet stares. The kind Elliot caught when he wasn't looking. The kind that ended too fast, like Noah didn't want to be caught seeing something he shouldn't. Elliot told himself he was imagining things. That this was what happened when you wanted something too badly. Your brain invented signs. It filled in blanks with hope. He'd done it before. Crushed on someone who was kind to him and mistaken that kindness for something more. It was a pattern he swore he wouldn't repeat. Still, he couldn't help noticing how different this felt. Noah never treated him like a placeholder. Not like some of the other guys he roomed with before. Not like someone to fill silence or share chores with. He listened. He remembered things. He made Elliot feel like he wasn't just tolerated, but wanted, present, seen. And that kind of attention is dangerous when you've spent years feeling invisible. One evening, as twilight painted the windows in amber, Elliot sat curled near the window reading. Noah was sprawled out on the floor nearby, headphones in, nodding to music only he could hear. The sunlight hit him just right, shadowed him in gold. And Elliot had to look away, because it was too much, too close, too peaceful, and because his heart was doing that thing again, that quiet ache that felt both beautiful and unbearable. He needed space, but space in a shared apartment is complicated. Space inside your own head is worse. Later that night, as Noah scrolled endlessly through his phone and Elliot pretended to read, the quiet stretched long and heavy. Noah broke it first. You ever think about just dropping everything and disappearing for a while? Elliot looked up. Like, start over? No, like, not even start over. Just pause. Find some empty stretch of beach and sit there until you forget what day it is. Elliot smiled faintly. You're more of a city chaos type. I can't picture you going off-grid. Noah chuckled. Maybe that's why I think about it. Silence again, this time warmer. Then, without turning his head, Noah added softly, sometimes I think you're the only person who doesn't expect me to be anything. Elliot's breath caught. He wanted to say something, to reach across the invisible gap between them and name the thing neither of them dared to say. But he didn't. Instead, he nodded. Same. And that was the problem. They were too good at coexisting, too good at circling each other, never touching the center. It was safety wrapped in fear, but that stillness was starting to crack. Elliot could feel it. In a way, Noah lingered in doorways. In a way, conversations turned more intimate. In how neither of them used the word lonely, but both knew exactly what it meant. Something was coming. He didn't know what, but he was certain of one thing. He wouldn't be able to keep pretending forever. Elliot wasn't expecting Noah to come home early that evening. Usually, Wednesdays stretched into late-night meetups with friends, gym sessions, or random city wanderings that left him breezing in well after midnight. But that night, he entered just past 8. Quiet. No laughter, no calls, no music trailing behind him like usual. Just the soft click of the door and the sound of his bag hitting the floor. Elliot looked up from his laptop, startled by the early arrival, but even more by the shift in Noah's energy. There was something heavy in the way he moved. Not tired exactly, though fatigue clung to him, but something quieter, more inward. He walked past the kitchen without a word and dropped down onto the couch, not facing Elliot, not turning on the TV, not scrolling his phone. Just sat there. Elliot watched from across the room, unsure if he should ask or wait. He chose silence. It wasn't avoidance, it was attentiveness. Noah had moods like tides. Sometimes they rolled in needing distraction, other times they needed space. And Elliot, by now, had learned to read the difference. Minutes passed. Then Noah spoke. Softly. Do you ever have those days where you feel like you've been holding your breath since morning? Elliot closed his laptop slowly. Yeah, he replied. And it's hard to even notice until your chest starts to hurt. Noah nodded, but said nothing more. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, staring down as if trying to make sense of something invisible on the floor. The silence stretched again, neither comfortable nor uncomfortable. Just there. I think I'm just burnt out, Noah muttered after a while. Elliot shifted in his seat, folding his hands to resist the urge to say something soothing or witty. He learned that Noah rarely wanted fixing. He just wanted to be heard. I've been pushing so hard, Noah continued. Classes, family stuff, people wanting pieces of me all the time. I don't know. He sighed. I'm not complaining. I know I have good. I just wish I knew how to stop pretending I'm fine all the time. Elliot felt something twist in his chest, because it wasn't just words. It was rare honesty. The kind Noah usually kept hidden behind jokes and half shrugs and casual charm. You don't have to pretend here, Elliot said quietly. You know that, right? A small nod. Another silence. Then Noah leaned back slowly, resting his head against the top edge of the couch and closing his eyes. Can I ask you something weird? He said after a long pause. Elliot hesitated. Sure. Noah opened his eyes, glanced over at him, just briefly, and asked, would you mind if I just for a bit, lay on you? Like your chest. Elliot's heart stuttered. For a moment, he thought he'd misheard. What do you mean? Noah looked slightly embarrassed now, but not enough to backtrack. He rubbed the back of his neck, then tried again. I know it sounds odd. I used to do that with my brother when we were kids. After bad days. I think I just want that feeling again. That groundedness. It's dumb. It's not dumb, Elliot said immediately. His voice was steady, but his mind wasn't. Every warning in his head fired at once. Don't overthink. Don't assume. Don't make this more than what it is. But he also couldn't ignore the look in Noah's eyes. Uncertain, honest, unguarded. Are you sure? Elliot asked, more to give Noah a chance to back out than from any objection. Noah shrugged slightly, his voice smaller now. Only if you're okay with it. I just feel like I need to be near something that feels calm. And somehow, in all the chaos of his thoughts, that sentence silenced everything. Elliot nodded. Yeah, he said. It's okay. Noah didn't move right away. He exhaled, slow and long, then shifted on the couch, adjusting their positions without speaking. Elliot found himself leaning back against the cushions as Noah carefully rested his head on his chest, settling into a half-reclining position beside him. It was strange, not the closeness. They had shared space before, sat side by side on subways, passed each other food, brushed shoulders during movie nights. But this was different. This was chosen contact. Intentional. Noah's weight was warm and real. His breath audible. Not heavy, not fast, just there. Grounding. Elliot didn't move. His arms stayed loosely at his sides, unsure of what to do with themselves. But after a few seconds, Noah adjusted again, slightly curled into him, as if searching for comfort he wasn't sure he was allowed to have. So Elliot lifted one hand, slowly, gently, and placed it on Noah's back. Not pressing, just resting. Offering. Noah didn't speak. He didn't have to. His body relaxed. His breathing deepened. And in that moment, the room fell into a silence that felt more like peace than absence. Elliot tried to keep his own thoughts at bay, but they wouldn't stay quiet. He'd imagined moments like this. Secretly. Shamefully. Then hated himself for it. But none of those imagined scenes had felt like this. This wasn't fantasy. This was delicate. Real. And it wasn't about desire. It was about trust. Noah trusted him with something unspoken. And Elliot wasn't about to break that. Time passed. He didn't know how long. The sounds of the city faded into background noise. The clock ticked. Somewhere in the building, someone slammed a cabinet door. None of it mattered. Noah shifted slightly, his voice a murmur. You're really warm. Elliot smiled faintly. You're not exactly cold yourself. A soft chuckle. Thanks for not making this weird, Noah added after a pause. Elliot's hand made a small, instinctive movement. A light circle on Noah's back. Nothing he meant to do, just something that felt natural. It's not weird, he said. It's just you and me. And that was the truest thing he could offer. Noah was quiet again, and Elliot wasn't sure if he'd drifted off or was just lost in thought. His body had gone heavier, softer against Elliot's chest. And while his own heart was racing a little, Elliot focused on the weight, the warmth, the strange serenity of it all. He didn't want to misread anything. He didn't want to make it about something it wasn't. But there was no denying it. This was the most intimate they'd ever been. And it wasn't physical, not in the way most people would assume. It was emotional closeness, tangible and raw. It was a question without words, and an answer given in silence. Eventually, Noah stirred again, just enough to speak. Sometimes I think everything in my life is too loud, too fast. But this, he shifted slightly closer. This feels like I finally remembered how to breathe again. Elliot didn't trust himself to speak. He tightened his arm slightly in acknowledgement. Just enough. Noah didn't say anything else. And soon after, Elliot felt his breathing even out. He was asleep, and Elliot lay there, motionless, holding a person who meant more to him than he could ever admit out loud. His chest ached, not from the weight, but from the tenderness of it all, from the fear that this moment might never repeat, from the hope that maybe, just maybe it would, because whatever this was, it was real, and real things always left marks. Elliot didn't fall asleep that night. He couldn't. Not with the weight of Noah still resting gently against his chest, his breath steady, his presence so close that Elliot could feel every rise and fall of his ribcage against his own. It wasn't romantic, not in the way books or films might paint it. There was no dramatic music, no breathless confession. It was quiet, still, so still that it felt fragile, like sound might shatter it. And yet, that stillness vibrated with something unspoken. Elliot's hand, still resting lightly on Noah's back, felt heavy with meaning. He wasn't sure when he started running slow circles there, only that he hadn't meant to, that his body had acted on instinct, that Noah hadn't flinched, hadn't stirred, hadn't moved away. That meant something, didn't it? The questions came in waves. Thoughts Elliot didn't want. Thoughts he tried to suppress, but couldn't. What does this mean? Is this just comfort? Is he even aware of what this is doing to me? And worst of all, am I letting myself hope for something that isn't real? Elliot wasn't used to being touched like this. Not without conditions. Not without expectation. He had always kept people at a distance, or else they had kept him there. That was safer, cleaner. But Noah had broken through that without even trying. That was the dangerous part. He hadn't flirted. He hadn't promised anything. And yet here he was, curled up against Elliot like he belonged there, like the trust between them had shape and temperature and weight. Elliot closed his eyes. He tried to quiet his thoughts, but his heartbeat kept betraying him. Fast, insistent, embarrassingly loud in his own ears. He wondered if Noah could feel it, if it made him uncomfortable. But Noah didn't move. The pause between them extended far beyond words. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't dramatic. It was full. That was the only word Elliot could find. Full. With questions. With meaning. With caution. And underneath it all, longing. Not just romantic longing, though that was there too. This was something deeper. A longing to be understood without translation. To be accepted without needing to shrink. A longing to feel safe in someone else's arms and not question whether he was allowed to want that. That was what scared Elliot the most. Not the intimacy, but how natural it felt. How his body relaxed despite the emotional storm within him. How, for the first time in months, maybe years, he didn't feel alone. But what if it was just a moment for Noah? A fleeting need for comfort after a bad day? A childhood memory revived for one night and then forgotten by morning? Elliot knew that hope could be a dangerous drug. It blurred lines. It rewrote history. It created entire narratives from glances and silences. He didn't want to create a story where there wasn't one. But he also couldn't lie to himself. Not anymore. The truth had been growing louder inside him for weeks. And now, with Noah resting against him, that truth was screaming in his chest. He wanted this. Not the act itself. Not just the closeness. But what it represented. What it could represent. He wanted to be someone Noah could turn to, not just on hard days, not just for silence and grounding, but fully, authentically. And yet, Elliot also knew that love, especially the kind that grew in silence, wasn't always returned. He forced his thoughts to still. Not tonight. He wouldn't project. He wouldn't dream too far ahead. This moment wasn't for analysis. It was for presence, for honesty, for quiet connection. So he breathed. He focused on the rhythm of Noah's breath, how it aligned with his own after a while. He focused on the warmth of his back under his palm, the slow way his body rose and fell with each inhale. He let himself feel it all, not as fantasy, but as reality, limited, imperfect, true. Noah stirred slightly at one point, not to move away, just to reposition, to nestle a little closer. One of his arms came to rest loosely across Elliot's side, like a half-remembered instinct from a different life. Elliot held his breath, but Noah didn't pull away. And somehow, that said more than anything he could have voiced. It was well after midnight when Noah mumbled, half asleep, "You okay?" Elliot didn't answer at first. The question felt layered, like it wasn't just about comfort, but about everything. "Yeah," he whispered finally. "Are you?" Noah made a faint sound, something between a sigh and a hum. "Better now." Another silence. Then, "You've got a strong heartbeat. Steady." Elliot let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Is that a good thing?" "It's grounding," Noah murmured. "Like white noise. But warmer." That made Elliot smile. A sad kind of smile. Because those were the words that would stay with him. Not declarations. Not labels. Just that grounding warmer. It meant something. Even if he didn't know what. Minutes stretched on. Maybe hours. Elliot wasn't keeping track anymore. Time had softened around them, turned fluid. The city outside their walls could have stopped moving and he wouldn't have noticed. Eventually, he felt Noah's body become heavier, completely asleep now. Elliot stayed still. He knew that if he moved, even slightly, it might break something fragile. Not the moment itself, but the permission behind it, the vulnerability. And more than anything, Elliot didn't want to do anything to lose that. So he watched the ceiling. He listened to the stillness. And in that long, quiet night, he let his heart break open a little. Not from pain, but from hope. From how rare this kind of connection was. From how deeply he wanted it to mean more. From how afraid he was that it didn't. But most of all, from how peaceful it was to be wanted, even if just for one night, in a way that asked for nothing but presence. He would remember this forever, because this wasn't just a pause in conversation. It was a pause in fear, a moment between two people that didn't need definition to matter. And sometimes, those are the moments that change everything. They didn't talk about that night. Not the next morning. Not the next day. Not even 3 days later when they found themselves sitting side by side again, eating takeout in silence while a movie neither of them watched played in the background. It wasn't awkward, not exactly. But something had shifted. Elliot felt it in the quiet. Not a cold distance. More like the charged stillness of two people navigating a fragile thread they didn't know how to name. Noah wasn't avoiding him. In fact, if anything, he was closer, more attentive, more present. But he also wasn't acknowledging the gravity of what had happened. And that, more than anything, left Elliot in a state of suspended breath. He tried to tell himself not to overthink it. Maybe it had just been comfort, nostalgia, a moment of safety Noah had needed and nothing more. Maybe silence was his way of protecting that moment from being ruined by explanation. But then there were the other signs. Small, deliberate things. Noah no longer filled the room with casual noise. He didn't scroll through his phone in Elliot's presence as much. He asked more questions. He lingered longer in conversations. His eyes, when they met Elliot's, held a tension that hadn't been there before. Elliot caught himself analyzing everything. How Noah stood, how often he looked, the tone of his voice. He hated it. He hated how much he cared, how much he wanted a clarity Noah hadn't offered, how his heart jumped every time Noah entered the room. He didn't want to pressure him, but he didn't know how to be okay in this limbo. Then one evening the pause broke. It was a Tuesday. The sky outside had turned an odd shade of grayish-orange, the kind that hinted at storms without delivering them. Elliot was curled up on the far end of the couch, a book open on his lap that he hadn't touched in 10 minutes. Noah sat at the kitchen table, tapping a pencil against a notebook that had remained blank since he opened it. Eventually, he stood up, crossed the room, and sat down, not beside Elliot, but across from him, perched on the edge of the coffee table. Just close enough to make Elliot look up. Noah was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Can I ask you something serious?" Elliot's breath caught. Of course. Noah didn't speak right away. He stared at his hands for a moment, then looked up. His expression was different. Not guarded. Not nervous. Just ready. Like he'd rehearsed this moment in his head and knew there was no perfect version. That night, he began, voice steady. "When I asked to lie on you, I wasn't drunk. I wasn't confused. I meant it." Elliot nodded once. His throat tightened. Noah continued, slower now. "I told you it reminded me of being a kid, of feeling safe." That was true, but it wasn't just that. Elliot didn't move. I didn't say anything after because I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't want to mess up what we have. But pretending nothing changed didn't feel honest either. He paused, looked down. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. "I've never felt that calm with anyone before. Not in relationships. Not with friends. Not even with my family sometimes. Just you." Elliot finally found his voice. "Why me? I don't know," Noah said. "Maybe because you never asked me to be anything. You just let me be." And I think, he broke off for a second, visibly gathering himself. "I think part of me is terrified that if I say the wrong thing, I lose that." Elliot's chest ached. "You won't," he said. "Whatever this is, whatever you're figuring out, it's okay. I'm still here." Noah exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Okay," he whispered. Then, after a moment, he added, "I don't think I'm straight." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. but it echoed like thunder in Elliot's mind. Noah looked up again, more sure now, even as his eyes shimmered with something uncertain. I don't know what I am exactly. I've always dated girls. I still like girls. But lately, it's felt like that's not the full story. And I've been scared to say that out loud, even to myself. Because once you admit it, you can't unadmit it. People start seeing you differently, treating you like a different version of who you were before you spoke the words. Ellie understood that too well. I get it, he said softly. Noah nodded, almost to himself. But I think I'd rather risk that than keep pretending I know who I'm supposed to be. There was silence, but not the uncomfortable kind. This was stillness with weight. Then Noah said, "You matter to me, Elliot, in a way I haven't let myself say before. And I don't know if it's romantic, or if I'm just holding on to you like some emotional life raft. But I know I care. Deeply." Elliot's voice trembled slightly when he spoke. "You don't have to define it. Not for me." Noah looked at him, eyes steady. "But I want to be honest with you, because lying by omission still feels like lying." Elliot's throat was dry. "What are you being honest about?" Noah didn't blink. "I think part of me wanted to lie on your chest that night, because it felt like coming home, and not just in a comforting, platonic way, in a way that made me feel seen. Wanted. Safe." He let the words settle before adding, "I've never let myself feel that with a guy before." Elliot had no idea what to say, because this wasn't just vulnerability. It was trust, raw and deliberate, and it terrified him, not because he doubted Noah's sincerity, but because he'd trained himself not to hope. He spoke slowly. "What happens now?" Noah leaned forward slightly. "I don't know, but I want to figure it out. With you." Another pause. Then Noah added, "I'm not promising anything I don't understand yet, but I'm not hiding from it either." Elliot closed his book. His hands were trembling slightly, but his voice was steady when he said, "That's all I've ever wanted. For you to be honest with yourself. With me. We don't need to name anything tonight." Noah gave a small smile. "But I wanted to say it. I needed to." Elliot returned the smile, softer. "I'm glad you did." There was no kiss. No dramatic embrace. Just two people sitting in the truth. And for the first time in weeks, Elliot felt his heart stop racing. Not because the storm was over, but because they'd finally acknowledged that it had started. Noah leaned back into the couch beside him. Not touching, but close. "I was so scared," he admitted. "Not just of losing you. Of being someone I didn't recognize." "You're still you," Elliot said. "You just stopped running from it." Noah looked at him then, really looked. "And you stayed. I always would." Noah's words hung in the air long after they'd been spoken. "I'm not promising anything I don't understand yet, but I'm not hiding from it either." Elliot sat still, his fingers loosely wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. The quiet between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was alive. Something had changed, not in a sudden, sweeping way, but in a quiet shift like breath deepening after holding it too long. He didn't answer right away. He didn't know how. Noah's confession hadn't shocked him. If anything, it had softened something inside him, a defense he didn't realize he was still holding. But now that it was said aloud, Elliot had no idea what came next. "You don't have to say anything," Noah said, perhaps sensing the silence. "I just wanted you to know. I've been thinking about it for days, wondering if I should just let it go, pretend it was nothing, but I couldn't." Elliot set the mug down. His voice, when it came, was soft but steady. "I'm glad you didn't." Noah's posture relaxed slightly. Just slightly. Elliot continued. "I've been thinking about it too. About you. About me. About what we are." He looked down for a moment, not because he was ashamed, but because eye contact felt too sharp for the tenderness of what he needed to say. "My feelings aren't simple," Elliot said. "They never have been. I spent a long time trying to shut them down, or at least keep them quiet. I didn't want to risk losing what we had by asking for more." He paused, gathering the right words, not polished ones, just true ones. "But they're real, and I've accepted that. I care about you, Noah. I care in a way that doesn't fit neatly into friendship or crush or anything I can label without feeling like I'm missing part of the truth." Noah didn't interrupt. Elliot took a breath. "I don't need us to call this anything yet. I just need to know you're here, really here, and that whatever this becomes, we're going to let it grow with respect. No pressure, no pretending." Noah nodded. I want that too. They looked at each other then. No more shields. No more half-smiles to hide discomfort. Just honesty. Elliot added, I don't want to be someone you experiment with just to find out who you are. You're not, Noah said immediately. I don't know where I'll land, but whatever we're building, it's not a test. It's the only thing that's felt real in a long time. Elliot absorbed that in silence. Then he asked quietly, what if it gets hard? Noah didn't hesitate. Then we talk. We check in. We name things when we're ready, and we're honest when we're scared. But we don't disappear on each other. Elliot smiled. It was small, tired, but held warmth. That sounds like a beginning. Noah returned the smile, more certain now. It is. They sat like that for a while, without needing more. Not every moment required movement. Some moments were just acknowledgement, the kind that shifts how you see yourself when someone else finally sees you too. Eventually, Noah moved closer on the couch. Not dramatically, just enough. Elliot didn't move away. Their arms brushed. Noah's voice was barely above a whisper. So what now? Elliot looked ahead. We go slow. I like slow. No assumptions. None. And if either of us feels unsure, we say it. Elliot nodded. Exactly. Noah shifted, leaning just slightly, not touching fully but present. Can I ask for one thing? Elliot turned to him. Always. Noah's voice was steady now, no longer weighed by fear. Can we go back to how we were that night? You holding me. Just for a little while. Elliot's heart tightened in the best way. You don't even have to ask. This time, there was no hesitance. No uncertainty. Noah leaned in slowly, and Elliot opened his arms in response. Not out of obligation, not out of old feelings, but because it was right. Because this wasn't a repeat. It was a step forward. Noah rested his head where he had that night, against Elliot's chest. The weight felt familiar, but the energy was different. This wasn't seeking comfort. This was choosing connection. Elliot let his arm wrap gently around Noah's back again, fingers resting lightly. Noah breathed evenly, but Elliot could feel the shift in him, the calm that hadn't been there days ago. You okay? Elliot asked quietly. Better than okay, Noah replied. I'm starting to feel like myself. They stayed that way. No need to rush. No need to fill silence with words. Everything important had already been said. Minutes passed. Then, quietly, Elliot whispered something he'd thought 1,000 times but had never dared say aloud. You can be yourself with me. Always. Noah didn't reply with words. He simply nodded against Elliot's chest and held on a little tighter. And that was enough.